Let's rock and roll.
This is James Luxon, joined once again with Ben Davis. Ben, how are you?
I'm fantastic, James. Better now that I'm back with you.
Fantastic to hear. Thanks for joining me again. Let's go back to Saturday night. Darren Till and Anthony Taylor in the main event. Darren Till's Misfits boxing debut. Um, a solid performance from Darren. You look really, really good. What did you make of it?
I thought there were a lot of elements that he just clicked into better than most mixed martial artists who have transitioned into the squared circle, right? The footwork was on point, I would say, for Darren. He had a little bit of fun in there. You could tell there was some, relaxation inside Darren. But I don't know. I just thought that if Tommy Fury was in there against that version of Darren Till, it would have been a lot closer than what many people were expecting.
Absolutely. What did you make of Darren's ring IQ and his boxing brain? Because in post-fight, he said in an interview how he saw that a little bit open to a left uppercut, so he threw it, and that's what ultimately stopped the fight in the end. Does that sort of read a lot into his ring IQ?
Absolutely. I mean, he's always been a smart fighter. I think Darren's awareness on what strikes to throw and when led to that title shot against Tyron Woodley way back in 2018, right? So it was nice to see a return to form. I remember seeing, I don't know if it was the same interview, but he noted that he didn't really throw left uppercuts much in his career, but for this fight and this opponent specifically, that was a tool that he just found so much success with. So to look at a guy say, yeah, this isn't something I would normally use. But then in this fight, that becomes the kryptonite to his opponent. I think it speaks to the level in which the gears are turning inside the brain. So for me, yeah, Darren's fight IQ, incredibly high.
Obviously, before the fight, we spoke at the press conference, and you picked AT to win based on his experience in the ring, in glove boxing. So, in terms of that, and obviously before the fight, you thought AT would win. Did that make the win even more impressive for you? And how far can Darren Till go in Misfits boxing?
I think Darren can go as far as he wants. I think our problem is going to be, with our influencers and some of these crossover guys that we have, they won't be on his level. That's the reality. And as much as I love Anthony Taylor, he was quite literally punching up 20 pounds above the class in which he is a champion. So despite all of the adversity, he had a good round five after getting flatlined by a left uppercut. That seemed to be the end of the fight. AT's, he said, I'm still a dog, and had a really great next round until he was TKO'd. So I don't know. I was proud of him. I think that Till, whatever he wants, he can get in this scene. Obviously, Wayne Bridge just earlier today withdrew from that March 29th fight. Who knows how seriously he was committed to it even beforehand, right? Maybe this was just the original plan all along, a bait and switch. But if Till and KSI want to duke it out on March 29th, to me, that makes a lot of sense following that main event win.
I was going to say, come on to that. In terms of Darren, is it going to be hard to match him? And is he going to have to go straight in for the top dogs already?
I think so. Anthony Taylor is, I would look at following that fight, a nice warm up for him in this scene within boxing, and that was one of the best that we had to offer in terms of the crossover influencers. So for Darren, unfortunately, if he wants more easy tests, he's not going to get him. This was it. Right. So for Darren, I think if you want to do more misfits, it's going to be in the category of KSI's, Tommy Fury's, and other matchups, right? Chavez Jr., right, still out there. People talk about him. Anthony Pettis has expressed so much interest in boxing the last couple of years. So, I think there are higher level opponents. And for me, the best place for Till within boxing is on Misfits.
What about the other names he called out post-fight whilst he's in the ring? Was Masvidal and Mike Perry were two of the names. Obviously, Mike Perry and Darren Till have a lot of history together. I feel there's a lot of respect and almost a friendship between the two, but there's clearly unfinished business in terms of the fighting game between the two of them. Could you see that potentially happening on Misfits?
100%. I'd love to see Mike Perry and Till on Misfits. That's a main event right there. I mean, you stick that anywhere in the UK and it's flying off the shelf. I think it's been interesting that following their, infamous Spa video, no promoter really was rushing to put them together when they became available, right? So for it's almost overdue to get that fight, in my opinion, Perry and Till. So hopefully if, everything comes together, we can see that happen on Misfits.
Is Darren Till a main event fighter in Misfits? Is there, let's say, for example, if he doesn't fight KSI March 29th, is there any way that he could be as co-main event, or is Darren Till a main event man now?
I guess it's a question for Darren, if he would be willing to subject himself to a co-main spot, right? That crowd was very pro-Till in Manchester. I mean, there was, I think, 3,500. I don't round ballpark numbers, and 99% of them were Till supporters through and through. So, he's still got that draw power. And I think if he has I don't want to say humility because I'm not sure if that's the right word, but if he's okay with being co-main to a bigger fight, then I think that'd be fantastic. But for Darren, I feel like he only wants main events.
We mentioned Wayne Bridge pulled out of the KSI fight. They came together in the ring on Saturday.
Mhm.
KSI said a few things that Wayne Bridge obviously took offense to and felt crossed the line. That is what Wayne Bridge is saying. That is the reason for him pulling out. Do you think that is the case? You mentioned earlier you don't know if he's ever going to go ahead with it. Do you feel like it was almost a bit of a publicity stunt on Wayne Bridge's behalf to accept the fight, knowing he wouldn't go through with it? Or what's your thoughts?
Complete speculation on my end, obviously, but as someone who was not familiar at all with Wayne Bridge up until, the evening after the ceremonial weigh-ins, in my mind, I anticipated the level of backlash that they were going to get from, the court of public opinion who are sitting here going, oh, you can't do a sketch about, joking about fighting old people and then actually fight Wayne Bridge. It's a little hypocritical, right? I figured that that was going to happen. So in the back of my head, I'm thinking, well, maybe KSI's team knew that as well, and they're playing the 4D chess, couple steps ahead. It was nice publicity. It got a big pop. It got a lot of attention. But if they do announce a more credible opponent and it's seemingly like this was the plan all along, then I think that would make a little bit more sense. But I don't know. I for Wayne, it's weird that he would put himself in that fight in the first place, right? There's quite literally no reason for him to compete against KSI. So I'm not sure. I hope that a more credible opponent comes through. And for the original plans, I can't say with any insider knowledge, but yeah, fans didn't like it.
For me, again, going back to you mentioned about speculation. For me, my first thought was I was there Saturday and the crowd did not respond well to the fight being announced. It was a chorus of boos, and I don't know what it was like on social media, but I imagine social media followed suit on that and said, this is not a fight we want to see. Wayne Bridge doesn't fit the demographic of a Misfits audience at all whatsoever. For me, I'm a little bit like, have Misfits pulled the plug on it and said to Wayne Bridge, listen, use this as your excuse as the reason for pulling out the fight. This has backfired a little bit on us. It's not going to sell very well. We're going to, you know, ask you to move along your way, carry on with your quiet life, and we'll find somebody else. I know you don't know, you're not inside information. I know you work for Misfits, but is that a potential possibility?
I think in life, everything's a potential, right? You can never say with certainty that this is what occurred and this didn't occur. So who knows? I think that again, if Misfits wasn't anticipating a level of backlash, then maybe there was a level of, all right, this is how we sneak out of this one.
Who should KSI fight next? If it's not Darren Till, I think Darren Till is probably the most obvious selection. If it's not Darren Till, who do you feel it should be, or who would you like to see it?
If it's not Till, I've been campaigning for Luke Rockhold for a very long time. The last 4 or 5 months, both internally and externally, I've suggested Rockhold as I think that, within boxing, limited experience, but big name, former UFC champion of the middleweight division. There's a big durability question that's faced him for the last couple years of his career. So there's that big opportunity for KSI. Hey, you land that big right hand, you know what's going to happen to Luke Rockhold. But I don't know. I think besides Luke, again, Chavez Jr. is there. I think there's interest in that. Anthony Pettis, who's another boss of mine, he's boxed many big names. That would be a fun one to see. But I don't know. I would like to hope that whoever they pick next makes a little bit more sense, I suppose.
Do you think it has to be a boxer or somebody with a boxing background to make sense and to build to that Jake Paul fight that they seem to want KSI to have as the end goal? You know, would a Chavez Jr. be obviously he's a more credible opponent?
Mhm.
Obviously, you know, the high risk comes with high reward. And he would carry a high risk for KSI, who does have limited boxing background himself. But again, as mentioned, you do get a high reward in that in terms of it could be a Jake Paul fight after that one, even sooner than they expect it to be if KSI beats a Chavez Jr. or a Pettis, as you mentioned there. Do you feel it has to be a boxer for him to, or for Jake Paul and MVP to take it seriously?
I think he's in such a tough career spot because whatever actions he chooses, they're directly juxtaposed with what Jake's done. And that's a horrendous spot to be in because Jake has gone out there and faced a lot of people. I mean, lack of experience that Paul had when he fought Tyron Woodley, when he fought Anderson Silva. I mean, those are big names, and Jake was not really that accomplished at that point in time. So for KSI, yeah, I think he's in a difficult spot because if your end game is to get to Jake, I do think you need to take some riskier moves to get there because of this, lack of activity that we've seen. The fact that, the final time that he's fought, or the most recent time he's fought, was October 2023, and that was a decision loss against Tommy Fury. Since then, we haven't seen him. Jake's fought 3 times since then, right? 4 times, right? So I think that for KSI, like if Jake is the goal, you're playing catch up. But if Jake's not the goal, right? If the end goal isn't to become Jake, and I don't think KSI's ever sat there and gone, I want to be a pro, I want to be a champion. JJ's never put himself on that path. So there are options and a little bit more flexibility. But again, the problem is anything he does is going to get compared to Jake. And that just sucks for him.
Absolutely. And I can't believe I'm about to say this, but is this almost like an influencer version of Pacquiao Mayweather in a terms?
Fuck, I mean, maybe it feels like it's becoming that, with yeah,
But
potentially.
let's say Jake's not the end goal for KSI. What is, I mean, again, I don't know if you know, I don't know how frequently you speak to JJ, but for him, what do you think is what's the goal with Misfits for him? Is it a case of just having a few fights for his own, enjoyment, I suppose, and then sort of just sit back as the promoter and enjoy the entertainment side of it?
I think for JJ, he is at his core an entertainer, right? He wants to entertain audiences, and boxing was a fantastic way the last good better part of a decade. But at this point again, it just becomes tricky when you have a rival in Jake Paul who is proclaiming he wants the pro routes and fighting, some bigger names on a higher frequency. It's for JJ, entertaining might not be enough at this point because of that fan demand and these expectations that are being placed upon him. I think he'd be interested in fighting the biggest person, biggest name value person he can once, twice, 3 times a year and have that be that. But I don't know. Truthfully, I think the goal has changed a little bit, and who knows? I don't see him competing. Like I think in 3 years, right? That'll be it. I think he's got 3 more years, and then it's over.
I'm going to come on to a few questions that I actually had down for KSI at the press conference, but I didn't get to speak to him. So I'm going to
Sure.
start to yourself, Bennett. And this is comparisons between boxing and wrestling and WWE. As we know, KSI is looking to build Misfits as a sports entertainment brand,
Mhm.
sort of the same way as WWE is. So I'm going to, first of all, a few comparisons. So in boxing, we have interim world titles. Essentially means you're number one contender, mandatory for a world title. A little bit like a Money in the Bank situation with the WWE. You are, you've almost got your money there to you cashing your check in. I am the, fighting the champion.
Yeah.
Could be something like that in Misfits, like an IOU title fight kind of.
It'd be crazy if we had some sort of a stipulation, a gimmick where you could just cash in wherever, anytime. Like imagine Gibb versus Slim ends, and then B Dave's cashing in, for a shot at the winner. Maybe, I think that there is so much wackiness that we do that clashes directly with athletic commissions and sanctioning bodies. That Mams, like if you put that in front of Mams Taylor, he would be like, yeah, let's make that fucking happen. So there might, who knows, Money in the Bank. That'd be a fun gimmick. That would belong in Misfits.
Absolutely. We've seen recently in boxing Queensberry versus Matchroom 5 versus 5, similar to a Survivor Series. Could we
Mhm.
see, say, March 29th, a Team KSI versus a Team Darren Till 5v5?
I'd love to see that. I don't know. Again, the likelihood probably lower, but To me, that makes so much sense because you almost combine like an Ultimate Fighter esque, layer to it, And then if those coaches compete, then boom, we have a fantastic card. But I don't know the Matchberry Queensberry didn't. Which one swept the other one? Didn't Matchberry beat the shit out of Queensberry?
Queensbury beat Matchroom 5-0.
Queensberry. Yeah, so I don't know. We want. Hopefully, if we do it, it's more competitive.
Absolutely. How about managers allowed ringside as hype men, a bit like a Paul Heyman or a Jimmy the Mouth of the South Hart back in the day? Get them involved. Or what about a King in the Ring style, gauntlet style match? Winner stays on.
I'll answer both because I would like the managers, but by God, that would be so distracting. I'll say this: there has been conversation about a King of the Ring style, a Royal Rumble esque. 60 seconds timer hits and then someone else comes in. There has been conversation about that. I know that they've batted the idea around, and Mams was close to trying to create something like that concept.
Now, I don't know how dangerous this one would be, but an Iron Man match, most knockdowns before a buzzer sounds.
Oh my God. Do you know how much criticism we would give for that? The CTE is just multiplying in the ring. Um, I don't know. Yeah, I think if we yeah, like if maybe during fight week there was a hard spar and we would implement that rule set like open workouts, we had two fighters go at it, maybe, but unlikely on that one.
Absolutely. And then just finally, if KSI were to do a tag team fight, who would you like to see as his tag team partner? Would it be one of the Sidemen or somebody already in Misfits?
Honestly, I feel like KSI and Deji would make a great tag team. Brothers in blood, and now both the ring. I think Deji, his comedic value during fight week is just fantastic, right? The guy knows what to do when the cameras are on, and they're both huge names, right? Put him against. I feel like Deji and KSI and Logan and Jake tag team versus tag team a couple years ago made all the sense in the world. So opponents for KSI and Deji, I'm not sure, but I would like to see them as a tag team. That'd be funny.
Fantastic. Ben, as always, a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you very much for your time.
Love it. Thanks, James.